Okay, good morning, everybody. Bill Lester here with Hernando County Extension. Welcome to this week's virtual plant clinic. And my regular co-host, Lily Brownlee, isn't here this week. She's off on vacation. She's somewhere up north, up in Virginia, where it's a whole lot colder than it is here. If it was me, I probably would have gone, but she went the opposite direction. But that's okay. Today we have a special guest here with us. Maxine Hunter is with University of Florida Extension in Marion County, and she is the urban horticulture agent and also a master gardener coordinator up there. So welcome, Maxine. How are you today?
Thanks, Bill. Glad to be here.
So Maxine, why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about what you do up there in Marion County?
Sure. So I'm the urban horticulture agent in Marion County, and I do a lot of work with trees and turf and wildlife and pretty much anything else that could be horticulture, landscape, or natural resource related. I do a lot of work with our commercial pesticide applicators, and also, like I said, I do work with the HOAs as well as several different tree companies, and also Marion County itself to do consultations with some of our large, especially laurel oaks. I've been getting a ton of calls on laurel oaks and pine trees. So that's takes up a good chunk of my time. I've learned so much about trees in the last 3 or 4 years. It's shocking. It amazes me. Every day I learn something new. And there's so many cool things out there that go on with trees that I never realized existed before.
Same here. I'm surprised at how many tree questions we get. So obviously, if anybody's watching today and you have any tree questions, contact us. Are you a certified arborist?
I am.
I still have to take my test.
The test is a beast, but it's okay. You'll get through it.
I was going to take my test, and then COVID came along, and it kind of went on the back burner, and I assume that they're giving tests now. Yeah, that's something that's on my to-do list for the coming year.
Yeah, it's amazing. I did not realize the doors that would open, and then we can partner on that, Bill. That'll be fun.
Exactly. We could work with trees.
Yes. That's a request I get so much. I spend at least a third of my time working on trees now.
Wow. Yeah, I know that I get questions about trees on a regular basis. A lot of times in the spring and early summer, we'll have outbreaks of ith beetles and different types of pine tree boring beetles. So all of a sudden, we get a lot of calls and requests about that.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a really big, expensive issue with homeowners associations in a subdivision. If they have a lot of pine trees and all of a sudden they die, they have to be cut down. And it's very expensive to have large numbers of trees cut down. So
very expensive. Very expensive. I recently worked with a very small HOA that had recently spent $45,000 getting some tree work done, and they weren't even on the beginning of it. We evaluated, I believe, 135 trees over 2 days.
Oh,
and
wow.
Just insane. But it was an older HOA that had kind of like duplexes. They weren't exactly duplexes. Maybe they were quadplexes or something. But it had these series of little apartment complexes in it, and they had massive laurel oaks. It was probably a 45 or 50-year-old facility, and these trees were like 3 foot from the doorways.
Yeah.
It's like, and they had several that had already fallen. While I was working with them, they had a tree come down, and there wasn't even a storm, and it came down on one of the tenants' cars. So that was fun to see. And so it was pretty interesting. Now, I see a lot less problems with pine trees that are detrimental like we do with the laurel oaks. I'm not sure about your thoughts on that. And then, of course, I've been getting a ton of calls about the damage from yellow-bellied sapsuckers.
Yeah, that's something that always pops up especially during the winter.
Yep.
Well, we've had issues. We have a subdivision, a neighborhood here that's called Timber Pines. And obviously they have a lot of pine trees on the property. So when we have any kind of outbreak of ith beetles, which happened a few years ago, and there were native beetles, it was funny because that year we had during the winter, it was very wet. And then in the spring, it was very, very dry. And many of the pine trees got stressed out, which makes them more susceptible to the pine bark beetle. So they lost a lot of trees for that. And of course, on the common areas, they're responsible for removing them. And then people pay for that indirectly through the homeowners association fees.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. And,
another neighborhood in the same area, they had just had like 30 pine trees taken down just 2 weeks earlier. And as we were there, we saw probably 2,000 more trees that were just starting to show symptoms.
wow.
So very, very expensive issue.
Yeah, that's gets really stressful and really expensive. And, I'm always grateful when I do talk to places that have the HOA fees, because of the fact that then it doesn't always fall on the homeowners directly.
Mm-hmm.
So, because a single tree can cost multiple thousands of dollars very quickly. So, and then if you've got multiple trees, it just goes up from there. So,
yeah. And people might not realize that if you have a large oak tree somewhere near your house, you can't just ignore it for years and years and hope that it's always, never going to present a problem that needs to be looked at. You do need to plan on contacting an arborist and having them check that on a regular basis. And really, for those large trees right very close to your house, regular pruning and regular checking by tree service that includes a board certified arborist that knows what they're doing is a very, very good. And we even have somebody tuning in today that works for Lucas Tree Service. We don't want to be giving plugs for one tree service over another, but this is a good example that there are reputable tree services out there. Now, something that people might not realize is they kind of fall into two categories. There are board certified arborists, who is somebody who's specially trained and certified to look at your trees and get to the bottom of what the issues might be or the problems that might be that need to be taken care of. And there's just tree services, which will cut down a tree, but they can't tell you a whole lot about it. If you know for sure you want that tree removed for some reason, they will take it down and they will remove it for you, but they can't tell you a whole lot about the tree health, the tree safety, proper tree maintenance. They may not even necessarily be able to identify the tree if it's an unusual tree, because we have a lot of oddball species here in Florida. I'll get pictures sometimes, just like, I don't know what that tree is. I have to send the picture to somebody else.
Yep, I get that as well. And especially when I do site visits where I'm kind of looking around at everything on the property, whether it be for my own interest or because that's what I've been asked, I see stuff and I'm like, I don't have a clue what that is.
Yeah,
go do some research. But and that's a shame that there are other tree companies out there, not that they don't serve a purpose, that aren't certified arborists. But what happens sometimes that I've seen is they tell people things that aren't accurate to try to make some money. And so I actually was at a site visit on Tuesday, and an older woman whose husband is in hospice, and obviously she's struggling with many different things in life right now. And she had this beautiful holly tree in the front yard, and she had a tree company stop through her HOA and tell her that that holly tree needed to come down because it had the hardwood around old cuts, and said that it was decaying. And this tree was gorgeous. It had no shine of illness or disease by any mean. And so thankfully we were able to resolve that. And she actually had contacted someone else she knew, but she was obviously very upset about it.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no need for that tree to come down whatsoever. And they had very much convinced her that it was going to be a danger to someone. So, and I think that's something that, people play on is the fears that go along with large trees. So.
Yeah. And there are a lot of services and a lot of individuals. Sometimes I'll get a knock at the front door from people wanting to trim my palm trees, and I tell them, no, thank you. I know how to do it. I can take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you always want to be sure that you're dealing with a reputable service.
Yep. For sure. So with palm trees, one of the things that I find most frequently, especially when homeowners decide to do it themselves, or even if they've hired someone, but the lack of cleaning tools in between trees. And so I actually had a client with lethal bronzing about a week ago, and unfortunately, they had palm trees on two sides of a big arbor type display in their backyard, and they were very expensive palms that had only been in for maybe 18 months. And instead of one of them being infected, both of them were infected. Would it have happened if they hadn't pruned them at the same time? Maybe, maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
But they definitely were not aware of cleaning their tools in between trees. So something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's very important. We see cases of fusarium on palm trees, and that's almost always caused by dirty or unclean pruning equipment.
Yeah. Yeah. Pruning equipment is very dangerous because it's something that is an easy fix, but if you don't know, you just don't know. Or if you're in a hurry and you don't take the time to do it, it can cause big mistakes.
Well, we actually have a tree question or comment kind of here.
Excellent.
Amanda says, I can't understand that a lot of our counties require landscaping code when planting. However, once planted, they do not maintain them. So we are losing a lot of trees that are not being replaced. That can be an issue, and I know that our county does have requirements. If you buy a piece of property and you have a house built, depending on the size of the property, you have to have a minimum number of trees. And obviously, it's not their responsibility to come out and maintain them after you plant the tree. It's your responsibility to take care of them. But I know I also see on public land, trees aren't always necessarily cared for as well as they should be. Do you ever see crepe myrtles being pruned on county property? Maybe a little bit too short?
I see that a lot.
We see that here too, a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I was in Spruce Creek last week and saw some trees that were terrible. And county property, you can go to our government services building in Marion County, and you'll likely see crepe myrtles that have been murdered. So I get to the point where I can't even say crepe myrtle because it comes out as crepe murder right away.
Exactly. And palm trees are another one where either county workers or maybe a subcontractor they hire prunes entirely too much off the palm.
Yeah.
And it's not correct.
Yep. I kind of bad for the landscapers for the county because when they come out to our office, they get hounded.
Yeah.
You're like, no, don't do that. No, don't do that. We're just trying to do our job, lady. And we're like, no. And especially, it's not just me there. We've got myself and Amanda and that pass through, and they're like, no.
I know. We have pest control in our office, and when he comes out, we're all, what are you doing? What are you spraying? Why are you spraying it? Why are you doing it now?
Yeah. Poor guys. They're just like, oh, we just want to do our job and get out of here. And we actually had termites that we found in our building here recently, and it was not good. Yeah. And so they came out and were like drilling into the concrete around our building to put in this termite control of some sort. And I was like, what are you guys doing out here? So they're like, please leave us alone. We're just doing what we're told. So too funny. Pest control issues can be super fun. I love working with pest control issues. I know they're not always fun for whoever's dealing with them, but they're one of my favorite things.
Same here. We do have a few services in our county who, if they encounter a species of termite or something else, they're not really sure what it is. They bring up the ID, and I like IDing them. You see some really unusual things. I saw a gentleman brought in a sample the other day that included a carpet beetle larva.
Ooh.
And it's a fuzzy little thing, and I looked at it, it's like, I think that's a carpet beetle larva. I looked it up. Yeah, it was.
That is so cool. That is
you don't see them very often.
Very cool. Yeah, I've never seen a carpet beetle larvae. That's awesome. Yeah, I get really excited about that kind of stuff.
So do I. It breaks up the day at work.
Yes, it does.
Look at. Okay, I'll take care of that.
Yep.
So Deborah Sue wants to know, is there any concern over using freshly ground mulch from tree service companies who give away their scraps ground into mulch. And I know a lot of companies will do that. You can get on lists where if they're working in your neighborhood, they'll just bring a load over and dump a whole truckload in the driveway if you want.
I would love that. I wish they would come out where I'm at. I've signed up for those lists, but we're so rural. We haven't had any luck with that yet.
Yeah, you're a little too far out in the country, I guess.
Yeah. And then they look at our dirt roads and they're like, nope, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
So my opinion of it is use it. I think it's great. I think you need to watch for seedlings that might pop up, because sometimes depending on the tree company, if they're working in an area that might be side of the road, is probably the worst on the right-of-ways, where they could get seeds from invasive species, things like that, then it could be a problem. But for the most part, I love using the mulch from the tree companies. I think it's a fantastic resource, and why not recycle it and utilize it? Bill,
you just have to remember that you get everything, everything they threw in there. So hardwood trees, invasive trees, they're empty soda cans sometimes. I know you can get municipal ground up mulch a lot of times from your local landfill or dump, and there's a certain amount of trash, so you have to pick through it maybe a little bit. But free is free, and it will break down. It'll absolutely break down eventually.
Yep. I love it. Like I said, we've used it for different school projects. We have used it for a variety of different things, and it's worked very well. So I know there is some risk associated, and like I said, definitely watch for invasives to sprout up and get rid of them immediately. You will get a little trash, absolutely, but doesn't really bother me for the most part.
Yeah. So changing directions here a little bit. You're pretty familiar with wildlife, aren't you?
Yes, I love Florida wildlife. Very, very in tune with our wildlife. In fact, I had 3 little does out here in my front yard this morning when I took the kids to school, and they come out here and nap in the front yard at night, and my husband gets all excited to see them. And we've got lots of wildlife out here, and we're very grateful to have that.
Well, I know that we do get wildlife questions, and it's mostly armadillo. Somebody called about them just the other day, and we are going into mole and gopher season.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. I guess you get calls about them also.
Oh, for sure. So there's a few different things here. When you're working with armadillos, I strongly encourage people to just go ahead and call a wildlife trapper that has a seasoned trap. It is very difficult to trap armadillos on your own. It can be done. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but armadillos go by scent. And so generally what we call a seasoned trap is one that has had other armadillos in it, and so it smells familiar to them. There are pheromones that you can buy online through certain wildlife companies and season your own trap. And there's also some specific traps that work really well versus like your average, what are they, Have-A-Heart traps that you get from like Tractor Supply or Walmart. Rural King carry them. So these other traps have doors that go straight down rather than the trigger points. And they work very well, and especially once you've caught an armadillo or two. But I always like to use the example from my master gardener when I was in Flagler County, who contacted me about armadillo problems. And she finally took my advice and hired a professional trapper. They caught 13 armadillos out from under her house in less than 9 days.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. I was like, you would have never gotten rid of that problem on your own. So, a wildlife trapper, a good wildlife trapper, may cost a couple $100, but in my opinion, it's totally worth their services. And even with my wildlife experience, we have a problem out here. Again, we're very rural. We're very wooded. We get the woods rats, and they come into our barn and they eat our horse feed. They chew on my saddles, you name it. And so every couple of years, we hire a wildlife company to come in and catch some of the woods rats. And of course, they breed like crazy. They reproduce and very quickly. We have plenty of snakes out, and I'm sure the snakes love to snack on them. So the wildlife company with this particular case probably doesn't even put a dent in them, but at least it takes care of the nuisance problem. So and they do a really good job for us. And so we've been very grateful for that services, and we won't put down poisons because of our other animals. And so for us, it's much easier to hire somebody that comes in. They're in usually a couple times for a week or two, and then they're out the door and the problem is solved for a little while. So, but like I said, we have 100 acres on the back side of us, and all the property on all 4 sides of us is all wooded. So you're not going to ever get rid of these coming in. I find them out in my chicken feed, sometimes out in the feeders and different sources. So that's something to consider. Your wildlife trappers can be very useful. A great way to find a wildlife trapper is on myfwc.com. They keep a list of licensed trappers there. Doesn't necessarily tell you all of their specialties, but it can certainly help. Another option, Facebook. Facebook has got awesome resources as far as wildlife trappers in our area go, and also people that are licensed to do snake relocation and things like that. There are big groups on Facebook that do this type of thing. I know I'm on several groups that work with Florida snakes, both venomous and non-venomous, and it's amazing the number of snakes that they relocate rather than having to dispatch. So I relocated my first coral snake a couple weeks ago. I was very proud of myself. So,
Oh, wow. Good for you. Yeah, we have them in this area also, those in pygmy rattlers.
Yep. The pygmies, I have not relocated one of those yet. Thankfully, I haven't found one on our property. I've seen them on the roads quite a bit around us, but I haven't found one on our farm. But my 4-year-old almost stepped on a coral snake about 3 weeks ago, and she came running to me. And thankfully, she took so much time with me during COVID.
Uh-huh.
She knows her snake ID. She's 4 years old, and she knows her snake ID. And so she came running to me, and I went and got a large bucket and a pitchfork, and probably I don't have a hook yet. I need to order a hook, but I was able to safely get it finagled into a bucket and use the pitchfork to tote it, so I didn't have any risk of hands or anything getting away. And I was able to take it to the back of our 100 acres and relocate it. So
that's great. Starting me on.
yes. Oh, my kids they love it. So, and then you were asking about moles and gophers. And so
we get a lot of calls about that.
Yeah. So I always try to recommend to people to look up the laws on gophers and moles on FWC, because you can't just go remove gophers and moles. Now, you can get the pesticides that are used and sold at Lowe's for moles, but you have to follow the instructions on them. So you can't just go out and set traps or use sticky traps. There are very specific rules with gophers and moles. So actually pulling it up now if I can find it. But again, it's very specific to each different animal. You cannot just go out and decide that you're going to put poisons out, and you need to make sure that you're using the correct thing.
Yeah, we definitely don't recommend just throwing poisons out, and definitely don't be putting mothballs out in your yard or anything like that, because that's very dangerous to a lot of wildlife, neighborhood children, pets, pretty much everything. So you have to be careful when you're using any kind of poison out there to deal with something like that.
Yep. So, like I said, I like to recommend MyFWC to people. It really has some great resources. It has pocket gophers listed on it. There's lots of different opportunity for people to learn about our different species, which I think is so much fun. But the other thing to remember is some of these wildlife you do need permits for. And if you have to get a permit, you have to go through FWC on that. So, I've actually got the PDF up here. If you want to share it, I'll put it in the chat box.
Okay.
So this is specifically on pocket gophers. So a little bit on controlling pocket gophers is you can use the catch traps. They're similar to rat traps, but they're not. They don't always kill the animals quickly, so you really got to be careful how you place them. And they should be attached to the ground. So unlike, a rat trap that you would just lay on the ground, you really need to have something, either a stake or a string or something that you can pull this animal up and don't make it suffer. And that's the biggest thing with both FWC and wildlife trappers that know what they're doing. You don't want to cause the animal any additional harm. You want to keep everything very humane and don't want to cause any problems. But basically with the gopher traps, you've got to insert them into the gopher holes, which is not always easy. And then you cover the opening with a piece of board or cardboard. So, and obviously they can have extensive tunnel. So it's not as simple as it sounds. It takes a little effort to be able to do that. So, and the same with moles. Again, there are some mole pesticides that are labeled for homeowner use that you can get at your local box store, such as Lowe's or Home Depot. So you can consider that, but you've got to follow the instructions on that. So, and moles cause tunnels as well. They definitely have very large front teeth that are really good for moving soil, and their paws are very good at moving it out of the way. And the biggest thing with moles and pocket gophers as well is removing their food source. So much like any other wildlife, you've got to look at why they're coming to your property and what they're looking for there. And usually with both of those species, they're looking for insects. And so a few things you can do differently is not water late in the afternoon or early evening hours. Make sure that you're watering in the wee morning hours. So I like to say between 4 and 7 is usually ideal, 4 and 7 a.m. If you're watering closer to midnight, you might want to change it back a little bit. And I know some HOAs, depending on where you're at, you may not have control over that. I know on Top of the World, their residents don't have control over what time they water. I know when I was in Palm Coast, they did not have control over certain HOAs because, you know, they have to change the water flow. So they have everybody split up in different categories to make sure that everybody's able to get enough flow. Other things you might do is if you've got an insect problem, you may need to actually treat the lawn for grubs. And then they'll go away once the grubs are removed. So you always have to look for what the source of them coming. So wildlife need 4 main resources. Food is usually one of the easiest, water, space, and shelter or cover. And so they're coming for one of those 4 reasons. And so looking at what reason they're there is usually the best way to get rid of them.
Gian, I've always found, especially with moles in a more urban subdivision situation, they're not there forever. It's not like a mole's going to move in and be there for 10 years. They must be eaten and fed on by a lot of other animals, between birds and snakes and things like that.
Absolutely.
And I've told people if you keep pushing down their tunnels, and there's a lot of old wives' tales about chewing gum and dog fur and all kinds of other things you can stuff in the hole. Basically, if you aggravate them really bad, they'll move into your neighbor's yard, and the problem.
There you go. That's right.
Yep.
That's right. Yep. Another thing that we like to talk about when we talk about wildlife is, you know, you might not want to go spend the money on the most expensive products that are out there. Oftentimes your ultrasonic devices and these different noise making machines or vibration making machines don't always work. Usually it's the more practical common sense items that work better. And I'll tell you, one of the most effective things I've found on all wildlife species when I've run into problems is going down to the dollar store and getting a big bottle of ground red pepper and putting that on whatever area they're in. They get that in their nostrils or get it on their mouth, and they're not going to come back anytime soon. Mm-hmm. It's like $1, anywhere from $1 to $1.50 for a big jug of it, and a jug of it will go a long way. I've even used it when my horse decided she wanted to start chewing on the boards of her fence, and I was like, no. Oh, and it worked great. I was amazed at how fast it worked. And so those hot peppers, it's not just that we want to get any kind of red pepper in there, but it's the capsaicin in it. Mm-hmm. They can oftentimes smell it and, of course, taste it as well. So it works in many scenarios. I don't mind putting that in my vegetable garden even. It doesn't hurt a thing. So I've heard garlic as well. I haven't personally tried garlic, and the red pepper is cheaper, and I have personally had great success with it. So I know my husband tried the using dog hair on, we had persimmon trees out here, and the deer were just mutilating them. We were shaving down my little Havanese during the COVID quarantine, and a puppy got a quarantine haircut too. Sorry, girl. But we took that excess hair and we put it around the base of the trees.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't seem to do much. So it might have stopped them for a week or two, but
yeah, I've heard that a lot of those things, even if you get a plastic owl or the CDs and you tie them to a string, it scares animals really temporarily.
correct.
But after a couple of days or a week or two, they kind of get over. And it's like, that's not a real owl. It's not going to attack me. So they come right back. But I know that things like garlic and hot pepper can work as not really as an insecticide. It doesn't kill the insects. It just deters them.
It just deters them. It stops wanting to be in that area, and that works very, very well because basically what you're trying to do is change their habits.
Yeah.
You want them to continue with the bad habits, just like when we have a bad habit, whether it be biting fingernails or whatever. You could probably put red pepper on your fingernails, and it'd probably make you stop biting them. It's
they make that stuff that you put on your fingernails that tastes really bad. So same thing.
Yep, same thing, same principle. And like I said, it's really just about changing the animal's habits. So I know, if they're very, very desperate on food sources, then it's a little more challenging. But if there are any other food sources in the area, they will usually reroute.
Mm-hmm. Well, Teresa at the office said that's great information.
Thank you.
And Teresa also had another question. We have a lot of calls about, is it too late for a vegetable garden or should they wait until spring?
Depends on what you're planting. Most things you're going to want to wait till spring. There's a few things that'll still probably do okay right now. Maybe some of your broccoli, bok choy, things like that. But other than that, cabbage might be okay. But I would probably suggest for most people, they're going to want to wait and start transplants in early February, maybe even late January, and then put them in the ground in March.
Yeah, I'm still planting things like lettuce and kale.
Yeah.
Radishes only take 30 days. So you have to them still.
Yeah.
You want to be sure to plant those cool season vegetables right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're probably going to get some more cold weather.
Oh, I think so. I think we're definitely going to get some. I know it burnt back my banana last week. I have a little dwarf banana, and I was so disappointed because I totally forgot to cover it. And my husband put it in a spot that I probably would not have put it, but it seems to be happy. So I let it be, but he didn't remind me to cover it, and he didn't cover it, and it's with his plants. So yes, we have his and hers plants. So
okay, separate gardens, huh?
Well, we do because I can teach it, he can grow it. So he has the green thumb, and so he does not let me touch he does hot peppers, and he does everything from canning them to fermenting them to making hot sauces, you name it. And they're way too hot for me, but he does not let me touch his hot peppers until he runs into a problem. And then he comes and gets me and says, help, what do I do? So my little dwarf banana up there with his hot peppers, which seem to be fine, which I was amazed by. And my little banana looks pretty sad now.
Yeah, I've started growing hot peppers, and I dry them and grind them into a powder.
He does the same. He loves it. So I'll have to hook you guys up so you guys can talk.
Yeah, we need to trade.
We have so many varieties of hot peppers, Bill. I don't even know what we're going to do with these varieties of hot peppers. He loves them.
I grew Thai hot peppers last spring and summer for General Tso's chicken. I got awesome. 2 containers of the dried powder. They did great. I got a ton of them.
That's awesome. Yeah, he's got everything from ghost peppers to, he bought these little ones. They were called bumblebees or something, and they're like this big, and he thought he was going to be smart and just go ahead and pop one of them in his mouth.
You don't want to do that.
No, it was awful. It was awful. I was like, what are you thinking? So he likes them. He's got the scorpions, the ghosts, habaneros, and our habaneros are still producing like crazy. So he picked a whole bowl of habaneros yesterday. Of course, we've got lots of datil peppers, and then he's got all these other specialty peppers. So we've spent quite a bit of money at some of the specialty seed companies in the last year and a half on pepper seeds, but he likes it.
Yeah, sounds like he likes the really hot ones.
He likes the really hot ones, and no, not me.
Yeah. I like the milder ones and the really tasty ones.
Yes, I am much more for that. So, but he shares them with quite a few people, so that's been fun.
So we got a question about navel orange trees, and Lori has one that did not fertilize this year or provide extra irrigation during the dry summer. And she noticed that when she cut an orange open this morning, the orange has dry spots in it, especially near the ends. Also, not a whole lot of flavor either. Any ideas? And I think the answer might be included in the question there.
I think it might be as well, because I did the same. I slacked on my Satsuma this year, and I didn't take very good care of it. And all of my big, beautiful, easy to peel Satsumas are so dry. The flesh has got no juice in it, and I am heartbroken because the tree is producing like crazy. And I will say, you've got to watch out for citrus greening on these trees. But if your tree is not got asymmetrical yellowing on the leaves and has decent fruit production, you probably are okay with citrus greening, and it either hasn't gotten it or has tried to recover from it. But I think that irrigation and fertilizer probably has a lot more to do with it. So, Bill, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, citrus. We don't get too many questions about it anymore because the citrus greening has killed so many homeowner trees. It is very important that you provide the regular, even irrigation for it during the summer when we're not getting a lot of natural rainfall. Very important that you fertilize with a quality citrus fertilizer that has all the micronutrients in it the trees need. Same thing goes for palm trees. You want to use a quality palm fertilizer. I looked at some of the cheaper ones and looked at the ingredients, and it's just missing a couple really important micronutrients. So you want to spend the extra money and get a good one. And a lot of times with citrus, you're going to have to spray it with the fungicide a few times during the summer also. Citrus still has a lot of different, more fungi than I can cite ID on them. I can keep up on all the ones they can get.
They also get the citrus rust mites really bad. So if you've got any browning towards the connection with the stem, that's something you definitely might want to consider bringing a sample in, and we can throw it under the microscope. Bill and I are both very good at that. But I would say it's definitely an irrigation and fertilizer problem. In my experience, citrus definitely does not like wet feet, so don't over irrigate it. But we're in drought, it needs to have some extra irrigation. And again, my plants, I stay at the office and take care of the plants there. So my poor plants here at home get completely neglected. And I know also this is a problem with older citrus as well. So when you've got younger citrus, you don't see the dried fruit as much. But when you've got an older established citrus that is actually, probably much more resilient to citrus greening in most cases, but it needs that extra TLC, that extra regular irrigation if it were in drought. And again, like you said, the quality citrus fertilizers. Pruning is something sometimes we forget on our citrus trees, and they really do need to be thinned out a little bit. And I know that's something my tree needs, and maybe I'll get to that here in the next month or two.
Yeah.
I'm feeling guilty about it.
All your free time.
Yes, exactly.
So Kathy put an owl out. Now her wild birds will not come back to eat. So keep that in mind before you start using putting fake owls and CDs hanging from the trees and fence out there. It's going to scare everything away potentially.
Yeah, that's true. And they may come back eventually. So what I've seen with those fake owls is there's certain birds that really don't like them, especially your small migratory birds and things that would normally be really good prey species. They usually disappear. And things like your big, ugly black crows and your predatory birds don't mind it a bit. So that's pretty common.
So we have a question from Carl about philodendrons growing in a greenhouse. And I know Carl asked this question on something else we were doing on Facebook Live yesterday. So what do you know about philodendrons? I know it's a general rule. They're easy to grow. They will get burned back if it gets too cold. They could freeze.
Mm-hmm.
And they usually do out in the landscape here in Hernando County.
Yeah.
Sassa.
We have not had any problems with our philodendron freezing back, but I think they would do fine in a greenhouse as long as you've got room for them. I personally, I like the little dwarf philodendron, the Xanadu's, but philodendron can get very aggressive and grow very well here. So I don't see why you couldn't put them in a greenhouse for the winter, or starting them in a greenhouse. I think the biggest thing with philodendron is making sure they don't get too much moisture where you start to have fungal issues.
Yeah, they can get fungal leaf spots. So, Carl, if you want to go ahead, if you want to take pictures sometime and email them to me directly, I got my email up there on the screen. Just feel free, and we could try to get a better idea about exactly what's wrong with it. And here's another tree question. Speaking of trees, is it okay to plant palm trees now, or should we wait until spring?
That is a great question. And so the general rule of thumb is here in Central Florida, you can pretty much plant year round. However, you are still taking a risk. If we were to get a really heavy freeze, it would be very difficult for that palm. So if you haven't purchased it already and have the time, then it's better to wait. If you're really just gung-ho and you're ready to move forward with it, then I think you're probably fine, but be prepared to cover it when we get cold weather in late January and early February. You're going to have to really do some work to keep it protected.
And you want to make sure it's a variety that's going to do well, depending on exactly where you live. And you can experiment. You can push it a little bit. We do have Bismarck palms growing in my neighborhood in Spring Hill.
Yep.
But I hope those people realize that if we have a devastating freeze and it gets down to the teens, then there's no guarantee. It's going to get damaged. Probably not completely killed, but it will get damaged. There's no guarantee it's going to survive that. So know that up front. Feel free to experiment. Now, coconut palms and tail palms here in Hernando County is probably not a good idea. It doesn't have to get very cold to completely kill them.
Yep. No, I would totally agree.
Yeah, but if you're putting in Sylvester palm or even a queen palm or cabbage palm here in Hernando County, this is a good time of year. It shouldn't be a problem. And Kathy has a little comment here that one of her laborers, I believe that they have a tree service, was working in a flower bed and dirt got into his eye. The dirt had something in it, and soil can have a lot of different things in it, and he lost his eye. Is there a way to test the dirt? And I know that there really is. If you test any soil, it has so many different bacteria and fungi and microorganisms in it, you're just going to find a million different things in it.
Yep.
And so you always want to be careful and realize that your soil could have anything in it. So you always want to be careful with gloves, especially when you're working with compost. Compost can have a lot of other things in it. Wash your hands very well. Sanitation, very important. Obviously, be careful not to get things in your eyes when you're working outdoors.
Yep. No, I would agree. And there certainly are ways to test the soil, but generally speaking, unless you're looking at a very specific area and looking for a very specific pathogen, it's, we can't test every inch of soil everywhere, and it's going to change regularly. So I agree completely, Bill, that, looking at different compost piles and stuff and just taking those precautions is probably your better option.
Yeah, because people don't realize that even native soil outdoors can contain salmonella and a lot of other dangerous bacteria in it. And it's just a natural part of the environment. It's not something that we did. It's just natural.
Yep. And it's usually pretty healthy for the soil, but it's not always healthy for us. And it's very rare that I hear of someone getting issues, especially to that extent, from interaction with the soil. But I have heard of several cases where health issues have occurred.
It is very rare, but it can happen. And I'll know if you ever watched the TV show, I'm not even sure if it's still on, Monsters Inside Me.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I was
Terrifying.
watching that to try to guess what it was. It was good practice for me. And
That's
those are just rare, unusual circumstances that unfortunately somebody gets into something or comes in contact with it.
Yeah.
So you need to be careful out there. It's a big, scary world if you think about it too much.
Yeah, it really is. Yep. We can't stay in our little holes inside all the time. At least I don't want to. But taking precautions can get us a long ways. It's really amazing that our species has made it this far when you look at all the dangers.
If you look at bacteria and viruses that are out in the environment, and spiders and insects and mosquitoes and everything, yeah, you don't want to dwell on it and focus on it too much.
No.
Not good for you.
No.
So if you guys have any last moment questions here that you want to toss in, here, Maxine, is that your correct email address?
That is my correct email address. Feel free to.
Right.
I love it.
Sure, if you have any other wildlife or small animal kind of questions, ask Maxine. She knows a lot more about it than I do.
Thanks, Bill. I like the wildlife questions. I grew up in the woods out here in North Florida and had a great time growing up with it. It's changed so much in the last 30 years. It's just scary. So
it has, and when we have more development, it drives animals from the woods, and now we have a lot more contact. Even
absolutely.
Developed neighborhood, we have so many coyotes in Spring Hill in Hernando County. It's amazing that you have.
Yeah, it's really amazing because you've got a lot more coyotes in rural or in urban areas than you do in rural areas, and it's because they've adapted so well. I mean, we see a few coyotes out here where I'm at, but not often. And we had exotic deer out here for a while before my dad passed, and every now and then we would have to get in there and trap the coyotes because they would kill the baby deer that were and but it was not a frequent occurrence. And since we don't have the exotic deer now, we rarely ever have any issues. So
yeah, coyotes do very well in urban and suburban environments. Here live and spend their days in golf courses.
Yeah.
So,
you know, last time I went down to Disney in Orlando, we got a little condo down there for the family, and we spent the weekend at the pool and whatnot. And we would be driving in from going to lunch or whatever, and there would just be a random coyote on the side of the sidewalk, literally. And at night, you couldn't put your garbage out at the little condo place because the coyotes would come and get into your garbage. They were horrible. I've never seen quite so many. I was amazed because I think in a 3-day weekend, I think I probably saw at least 10 coyotes, and we were at one location. So that'll tell you how many there probably were in that area.
Yeah, well, at Disney, they're probably very well fed also. So.
Oh yes, Between the tourists and everything else, I'm pretty sure they're not looking for prey. They're looking for scraps.
Yeah, and you don't want to go out there and feed them and try to pet them either if you're visiting somewhere else.
That's right.
So if anybody's ever wondering about our upcoming classes, just go to www.hernandoextension.com, and that's a whole lineup of all of our upcoming classes, our upcoming virtual plant clinics. Let's see, next week we will not be here because next week is going to be Christmas Eve, I believe.
Yes, I'm excited. Are you?
So I'm ready for some time off of work myself.
Yeah.
But I think that we're going to be here the week after that on New Year's Eve. I think Lily and I figured we'd just go ahead and do a clinic in the morning just for the heck of it. You know, not that I'm going to be bored by that point, but I should be better rested by New Year's Eve to do a plant clinic.
Very cool. That should be fun.
So let me double check real quick here. Yeah, Kathy has coyotes on the beach and roosters on the beach. You end up with roosters all in the strangest places sometimes. Just driving down the street, it's like, oh, there's a rooster by the side of the road.
That is so funny. Like haven't had to deal with that here.
Yeah, I don't get too many rooster calls, honestly, but they're out there.
Yeah. We had 2 that showed up at our office just randomly. I was like,
oh. Okay, final question from Lori, and this is a very good, very timely one. Can poinsettias bought from a retail store be planted in the landscape?
absolutely. Usually we wait until the last chance of frost has passed, and you can plant them right in the landscape. So make sure you keep them pruned, and they are a short day plant, so they like the shorter days and will start to bloom after the fall. And once we start getting those shorter days, switch off of daylight savings time, but definitely they grow great in the landscape.
Yeah, I've seen them grow quite large, and
Yes.
they turn color again, not necessarily perfectly in time for Christmas, but definitely every fall or early winter.
Yep. Yep. And they come in so many different colors now. It's
They
amazing.
do, yeah. And see, Kathy's here from Duval County. You know, we have people who regularly watch us here from Duval County, from up in the Panhandle, a number of people from Broward County, because they've
Wow.
actually got coconut palms and papayas and things like that. Pinellas County. So we get folks from all over the state here.
That's amazing.
It
Wait,
is, yeah. And for everybody who's still on here right now, thank you so much for tuning in and watching us and saving your questions up for Thursday morning and bringing them along and asking our guests. We really appreciate it. I know I really enjoy doing this every week, and we're more than happy to keep this going as long as you guys keep tuning in and asking questions, because otherwise I'll just get bored.
That's right. That's right. We've got to have people to keep us busy, and we love seeing everybody. That's awesome.
Okay, well, it looks like it's about that time. So, Maxine, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll definitely have to have you come back again sometime. And everybody, if you think of any other lawn and garden questions, our office is open. Give us a call, an email, get in touch, and we'll definitely help you out. But other than that, I guess we'll see everybody not next Thursday, but the Thursday after that.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. Everybody have a happy holiday.
Okay, yeah. Thanks again, everybody.